Hello there. In today's video, I wanted to discuss an important topic as it relates to our romantic relationships, both those that we're pursuing and those that we might already have. Specifically, I'm going to discuss a topic called finding Mr. or Miss Right. Now, for those who are already in a relationship, I'm certainly not intending for this video to be construed as advisement to pursue another relationship. Quite the opposite. Rather, I'm intending for this video to be a catalyst for self-exploration, whether you're in a relationship or you're seeking one or maybe seeking one in the future. Now, with that brief introduction out of the way, you might ask, why is this so important? To answer that question, I'd like to begin by asking you a somewhat rhetorical question to consider. With today's technology and all of the knowledge available about relationships, doesn't it seem like finding Mr. or Miss Right would be much easier than it is? The latest statistics on marriage success suggest that approximately 50% of all first marriages fail. The likelihood of a second marriage succeeding drops to 25%, and third marriages only have a 10% chance of success. So it seems that regardless of the overabundance of information that's available today on relationships, finding Mr. or Miss Right isn't easy at all. Given the rather bleak statistics regarding marriage success, it's not necessarily surprising that so many people have decided to cohabitate as unmarried partners rather than tying the knot. However, the decision to not marry and simply have a long-term cohabitation agreement really makes little difference. The stark reality is that at least half of all people simply aren't very successful when selecting a life partner. Why is this? And what can be done about it? Is it just a fundamental matter of compatibility? Is it that people simply do not have the level of commitment that previous generations seem to embrace? If you were to ask the Oracle of Knowledge, also known as the Internet, you'll find that compatibility, commitment, not really knowing one's partner, and life changes seem to be common theories, yet none of them really cut to the core. In large part, we're often looking at relationship failures through the rearview mirror and offering our hindsight observations such as, well, they didn't communicate well, or he or she was too selfish, and so forth. Without question, all of these sorts of observations are valid. However, is there any field of study to date that has created an optimal life by studying failure? Doesn't it stand to reason that studying what makes successful couples successful is a more useful approach? So in this video, I wanted to share 3 observations and recommendations based upon my own research, personal experience, and the experience of others with whom I've worked with. The first fundamental aspect that we have to consider is, why are we even here? Specifically, why are we here as individuals on planet Earth? That may seem like a very abstract question that has little relevance to the topic at hand. However, it is actually quite germane. At some point in our life, each of us will ask ourselves, why am I here? Or, is there a purpose for my life? Regardless of one's perspective on spirituality, the undeniable truth is that there are over 1 trillion atoms in the human body, arranged in a specific way to create cells, tissues, and organs. The statistical likelihood of a random occurrence spontaneously happening that would result in a living being is unremarkably unlikely. However, for argument's sake, we'll say that's exactly what happened. However, there is a problem of Newton's first law, which is every object will remain at rest or in uniform motion in a straight line unless compelled to change its state by the action of an external force. Obviously, the universe would have had to have changed for us to exist. So, what compelled the change? The quantum sciences have concluded basically the same as what ancient societies knew thousands of years ago. We had an intelligent creator. Since our Creator had to be intelligent to create ourselves and everything that we see, it stands to reason that our Creator, or God as many people call it, has an intention for our lives. Because why would the Creator create us if there weren't a purpose? For spiritually minded people, this concept isn't new, and it's something that many folks spend years pondering. Specifically, I'm referring to our life purpose or life path. We're all here for some reason, some learning that we're here to gain during our time on Earth. Likewise, one might assert that this purpose should be a driving force and criteria for decision making throughout our lives. Given that selecting a life partner is a pretty serious endeavor, it only stands to reason that a life partner should be on a similar or compatible purpose or path. More simply put, they have to be traveling in the same direction as we are. Otherwise, we'll just be growing apart. Unfortunately, this is where so many people in society face challenges. When asked, "What is your life purpose?" many people simply do not know, and thus they find themselves drifting along while the current of life takes them from place to place and partner to partner. Couples in successful romantic relationships know this and have a keen sense of their direction. They acknowledge that in order to remain a successful couple, they need to be heading in the same direction. And in many cases, they have the same or very similar life paths as their partner. Do they need to be identical? I personally do not believe that this is necessary. However, there must be compatibility between them. Likewise, does it not stand to reason that someone whose life path involved having children would have a very difficult time in a relationship with someone whose life path didn't? Unless they're heading in the same direction on this particular topic, it seems rather obvious that the chances of long-term success in this relationship would be very slim. This brings us to my next observation, which is that in order to find Mr. or Miss Right, one must actually know themselves. Now, to be very clear, the self that I'm referring to is not the persona that's been created and molded by society, parents, Hollywood, bullies at school, or the famous people we'd like to be. Rather, I'm referring to our true self. The self that existed before our parents, society, and other sources of distortion had their chance to teach us that being who we really are is bad, or that we're not enough or somehow unworthy. Underneath all of the social programming and baggage, there's a person under there that, for many people, remains hidden and buried for their entire lives. We know about their presence typically when we're out of alignment with them, because we have mental and emotional pain. When we're out of alignment with our true self, we'll always be in pain. Yet it's scary for many people to be their true self because they've learned by society and other places that their true self isn't good enough. So they bury it and medicate it until they're numb. However, whether we like it or not, it's our true self that we're ignoring when we go headlong into a relationship, hoping that a potential partner will change for us. In one instance during my early teens, I clearly remember telling my mother that I wanted to have a girlfriend. And my mother indulged me by asking, "Oh, what would she be like?" Like so many teenagers, I told my mother that I was attracted to a certain type of person based upon physical attributes like hair color, eye color, height, and so forth. My mother listened and smiled and politely shared that everything that I'd shared with her about my ideal girlfriend was superficial and non-lasting. I remember my mother telling me then, "You need to love someone based upon what's inside, not outside." I'm sure many of our mothers have said that. My mother followed up by saying, "And you have to love yourself before you can love anyone else." At the time, I dismissed my mother's words of wisdom as fuddy-duddy. However, in retrospect, I can see that her words were as wise then as they are today. In reality, I didn't know myself beyond what society and my parents had conditioned or molded me to be. A persona, or ego named Tom, nor did I have any idea about my life's purpose or path. How can one love someone else if they don't know who they are or the path that they're traveling? Unsurprisingly, I had many difficult failed relationships until I did have a concrete knowledge of who I was, who my true self was, and the path that I'm supposed to pursue for my life. Couples in successful relationships know who they are before they try to get to know someone else. Fortunately, there has been a shift throughout society over the past decade where people are deciding not to marry or get into committed relationships until their 30s. I think that this is a wise move. However, it must be augmented with a genuine desire to get to know who they really are. When they do, they'll have a surprising revelation about who their partner is as well. The third key point, which I'd like to highlight, very much related to the second, is that we must set aside our ego's preferences for a partner. If you really think about it, it's our ego that gets us into trouble. It isn't our true self that maxes out a credit card to purchase items that we can't afford on our salary to keep up with the Joneses. It isn't our true self that's telling little white lies. It isn't our true self that lusts or is gluttonous or proud or greedy. It's our ego, or one of our personas. Our ego, or who we tell the world that we are, makes a ton of careless mistakes to bolster itself and its own existence. As I mentioned a moment ago, it's our ego that says, I'm going to ignore the warning signs and go into this relationship because this person who I'm attracted to will change for me. Put bluntly, we simply cannot trust a persona or ego that's been molded and crafted by society to dictate our decisions about a life partner, let alone anything else of importance. Given my ego's track record in choosing past relationship partners and other painful mistakes that I've made, I'm glad that I stopped listening because I'd never have found Marissa. Successful couples know that they must be patient, kind, humble, not self-serving, quick to forgive, and open to knowing that they don't know everything. They know that they must have faith, that there is something greater than they are, and that it will speak to them if they ask it. Likewise, they also have the courage to actually listen. With knowledge of our true self within, we must set aside our egoic preferences for a partner and know that God will guide Mr. or Miss Right to us, and us to them, at exactly the right time, in exactly the right way. As I tell all of my coaching clients, when you know yourself and you have moved beyond all of the egoic negative emotions, beliefs, past hurts and difficulties to really know your true self, your ideal partner will show up quickly and have a sign on their forehead. So I hope that you enjoyed this video and that it's given you 3 key points to really think about in your relationship or your potential relationships in the future. This is Dr. Tom reminding you to always live empowered on purpose.